Hello, and welcome to Birthing Beyond Borders, a podcast where we share the stories of migrant moms from around the world. From sleepless nights to moments of joy, we'll be diving into the real, raw, and inspiring journeys of motherhood. Get ready to laugh, learn, and experience a range of emotions while being inspired. I am your host, Adejumoke Olopade, and together we'll uncover the challenges, celebrate the wins, and honor the wisdom mothers carry across borders. Welcome to our community space. In this episode, I have with me Elizabeth, who's a PhD candidate and is currently working on a dissertation while juggling being a new mom to a wonderful baby boy. Welcome to the Birthing Beyond podcast, Elizabeth.
Thank you for having me here.
You're very welcome. And thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me today, despite, all the many things that you have on your plate. I'm so grateful and I do not take, the time that you've made for this for granted. So
Of course.
yeah, let's go right into it. Um, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? What country are you from? What brought you to the United States? How was the PhD journey going? Just whatever you feel comfortable sharing.
A bit about myself, what brought me to the United States, a couple of reasons, but primarily education. A bit about myself to kind of put things into perspective, especially with regards to what I guess we'll be talking about down the line, what I believe we'll be talking about down the line. Um, I, I, be, family background. Let's say I'd say I come from a a, a privileged home. We were okay, but I cannot deny my privilege, and that came with deep responsibility. And there was some values that I think I'd say my family set in me. I'd say for the first 14 years of my life, and up until when it was time to leave. So I'd say when it was time to leave, I lived in a couple of countries before I moved to, I lived in several places before I moved to the US. And how long have I been in? So yes, that's the little background. And how long have I been in the US? I'd say been in the US for almost a decade now. On in if I would count the in and out, non-frequent aspect of it. So almost a decade. Yes.
Awesome. Awesome. And you said that the primary reason you came out to the US was to study. Did you come out here for your undergrad or was it a graduate degree?
The first time it was for an exchange program, and that was an extension of my undergrad.
Okay.
And then second time it was for my graduate degree, so my master's degree, and then now my PhD degree.
Okay.
And that's been like 7 years now in total
Okay.
for graduate school.
Right. And what would you say is your favorite thing about living in the US?
I think that I would say it is home and families, what you make of it.
Mm.
I know that might sound a little profound, but in the US, home and family is what you make of it, especially if, of course, your family is not here. You, in my case, came to study and you have family back at home. And we are people of I believe humans generally are, we're people of community. So there has been that there's always that longing of wanting to find, quote unquote community.
Mm.
And so home and family is what you make of it. And having fundamental values that define what you consider family, what you consider home, I think has been the highlight or the favorite part of living in the US. So, and that means that value systems like character, value systems like love, in all its multifaceted aspects, but value systems like faith. Faith is a prism at which through which I view my life. It's the lens at which um, that guides every action, every decision that I take. So faith, the value system of faith, and my faith is what I use to define love in all its facets. So, and finding community that embodies that, I think, has been the highlight. And I believe you can find it anywhere in the world that you go. But because those are, again, things that are fundamental to my value systems, have been things that I have proactively sought um, to find and to build. And by God's grace, I have been fortunate with that. Um, and I consider that a privilege in itself as well. So yes, I'd say that that has been the highlight of my time in the US, family and home, and where I found it.
Thank you so much for sharing that. It's very interesting. Sometimes when I ask people, what's your favorite thing about coming to the US? A lot of people say, oh, it's the opportunities that I have here that I did not have back at home. And,
Mm,
hearing you talk about like the values that you've found to be helpful in being grounded in the US is very interesting. Because if somebody asked me, I'll probably say, I just love that there's like constant electricity. And I know that that's something that is like available everywhere, but for me, it was something
mhm.
I hate the sound of noise and generators and not having to deal with generators is probably what my favorite thing, if I'm being honest. But thank you so much for, for sharing that with us. I want to move, towards a deeper angle now. I want you to go to the moment you found out you were pregnant. Um, what did that moment feel like for you? Close your eyes and just think back about it. What emotions, flooded through your mind in that moment?
Frankly speaking, it was combination of, oh, I'm happy, oh, I'm anxious,
Mhm.
what if, and several what
Right.
ifs. There was a combination of, oh, I am pregnant, and joy, and then, oh, what have I done?
Yeah, and I reckon that that's the exact same way a lot of mothers, especially first-time mothers, feel. A lot of times we feel like, oh my gosh, this is something I want. I want to be a mom for sure. And then you find out, you see those two pink lines, and you're like, oh my goodness, it's happening. Am I ready? Did I think this through? So I can definitely confirm that I've heard this from, a few of my friends who are moms as well and who have talked about how like they felt super anxious at the same time they were very excited. And so, I'm wondering what are the things that helped you prepare for the journey ahead? The moment you found out, what made it easier to accept the fact that yeah, this is really happening. I'm going to be a mom.
Would say two
Hmm.
things, right? A big part of it be my faith.
Okay.
And that was um going back to God and being, I mean, of course, I had prayed, of course, you pray, God, you pray to God for everything. You pray to God for children, whether it's now or whether it's in future. You just pray, you pray ahead. At least that's what I do. Went to God and just prayed and asked for peace because again, there were mixtures of joy, but at the same time anxiety. And it was hard to know I was happy. It wasn't like I was joyful rather. It wasn't like I was um constantly anxious. But of course there was that subliminal what have I done voice that you kind of need peace that surpasses all understanding to overshadows.
Mhm.
So I would say faith. And the second thing that I would say is community. So faith wants to community. Um, I am I'm very particular about community.
Mhm.
And like I said earlier on community, which is family, which is home and wherever you find it. So I would say community. friends that you can just talk about these, and you would, especially godly counsel. Um, there is this there's a verse in the Bible that says, "In the multitude of counsel, there is safety." So I'd say there is safety of thought as well. You could that it helps to put boundaries to thoughts, to and most importantly, I think, put perspective
Mm-hmm.
and gratitude, because gratitude is also a part of perspective. So yes, I'd say my faith and my community was a very big part of it.
Okay. Okay. Um, and so when you say community, I heard you say like your friends, um, is community also, like your partner, your husband, or, is it just like external in terms of like outside of your own nuclear family? What was community like for you?
So what you meant? Well, of course, communities. My husband tops that dance chart, of course. So my husband, of course, he's a phenomenal man. And he was extraordinary from the very beginning up to now, and continuing. So of course, community, um, friends as well, family as well, and that is my immediate extended family
Okay. Okay.
as well, parents. So yes, it's the typical, I guess, definition of community, you would say.
Okay. And I guess in terms of like healthcare, are there ways that healthcare providers kind of like impacted your pregnancy experience? As Africans living in the US, especially women, sometimes, there are differences in terms of like culture, the differences in terms of like, what the expectation is. And so how did healthcare workers impact your pregnancy experience here in the US?
So prior to my pregnancy, I love to read, and I think I'd consider myself widely read, vastly read too.
Hmm.
So I was not ignorant to the narrative behind a healthcare, especially behind minority groups in the US. So maternal health care, especially childcare for minorities, or childcare even generally, I uh, learned about a few of that just by reading other people's experiences, and just reading generally broadly about that subject. So I would say that I came into this season of my life pretty armed with knowledge, well equipped, well armed with knowledge what to do. So there were certain things that I was very particular about, or that I for myself, when it comes to looking for a doctor, looking for a hospital. I mean, we had to move. We really literally relocated from where we were to another location just because of hospital.
Mm.
So I there are just some things that I was very particular about when it comes to who I wanted to receive treatment for, whom I wanted to receive care from, who wanted to be my OBGYN, and the kind of hospital that I wanted, the facilities that they had and they didn't have, and advocacy as well was very important. I had that conversation with my husband a whole lot about advocacy and just being on the same page when it comes to what we wanted and why we wanted what we wanted, and the ability to communicate that to our healthcare provider. So that whole experience with healthcare for me, I mean, it was two-sided, but like I said, the most important thing was just advocacy and being able to know what you want, and even if it's not going your way, to try to talk it out with the healthcare provider, and see what can be done about that. And sometimes they just it's just especially if you got a really good one, sometimes they're really looking out for you. So it was pretty good. It was overall good. Um, I think I'd kind of talked about the in between about that, but overall, I would say just getting there with the right, well equipped with knowledge, well armed with knowledge,
Mhm.
knowing what you wanted and knowing why you wanted what you wanted was very important. And I can definitely see how that was extremely instrumental to the to the pregnancy period and even afterwards, but especially during the pregnancy period for me.
Mhm. Okay. Yeah, I heard you say it was two-sided. What does that mean? And can you say a little bit more about what you mean by it was two-sided?
So by two-sided, I mean they were part of the um and I'm being careful what I'm saying so it doesn't sound like I um I am being critical about any of my providers. But there were just some parts of being two-sided was that there were parts of probably the journey of the pregnancy with respect to, your healthcare provider that you had some reservations about and you had to talk it out and some changes had to be made at any point. So that's what I mean by that's the other side or the in between. And then there were the extremely good part which thankfully dominated
Mhm.
whatever moments of reservations that we had to kind of work around.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for shedding more light on that. Um, at this point, I want us to, move forward a little bit, right? The moment you held your baby boy in your arms, what did that feel like?
Ooh,
A lot of
um,
women say that pregnancy is hard, it's a very tough journey and all of these things. But the moment you hold that child in
mm,
your arms, you forget everything. So did you forget everything? Or, what was that experience like for you?
that's funny. I would say, I would say you forget everything in an instant. That is true. Um, and then you remember it because it could be any moment from now 24 hours or more, a couple of days, but you definitely remember it after that.
Okay.
But of course, you forget it, especially if you've been pushing for long and you just want to just, get that breakthrough and then get the breakthrough and it feels like you're in the galaxy, a different galaxy for a moment. So yes, you definitely forget it, but you definitely would remember it as well
Mhm.
shortly after.
What makes
And
what makes you remember it shortly after?
it's just the reality of it. I'll give you a short story. I think it was the second night after my son was born. He's my first child. Was born, and I had a conversation with my husband that everywhere the baby was going, or we're taking the baby, he had to go with the baby because, of course, I can't move.
Mhm.
Um, because I have all these machines and tubes tied to me,
Mhm.
so I can't just move at will. So he had to be the one to he was more mobile than I was at that time. So everywhere the baby was going, he was going. And that was fine. I mean, we had talked about it with the hospital staff about incidents, quote unquote incidents, and they had said, oh, they'd never had any um troubling incidents and there are over 30 years and blah blah blah. So of course we knew that okay, we would rely on their words. But we still just it was just what we wanted. And I think the second night, after having the first sleepless night and the sleepless day as well, just trying to care for the baby, the second or the night before we got discharged anyway, um, I remember telling my husband, I'm like, this is gonna be the last night would ever have a full night, complete no more life sleep. So you know what? We're gonna use the nursery because the nurse had come in and she was like, do you want me to, watch over your baby while you sleep? It's been a long couple of days." And I was like, "You know what? Yeah, but just hold on, let me check with my husband." So when my husband came in, I was like, I think we really need this full night's sleep because this is like the last night we'd ever have this kind of sleep in a very long time.
Mhm.
So yes, she helped us. We got it. We saw it in the bill, and we were like, "Nursery in the bill wasn't free."
Wait, so you thought nursery was free and they ended up charging you guys for nursery? I would
Yes,
have assumed nursery
I thought it was just
was, well, honestly, too. Like, that is so interesting. Huh.
But we couldn't even go about it because we really needed it. I mean, I still sometimes relieve that night of sleep. That's how good it was. I knew it's like morning, a past life. I know you're never gonna get that life again, at least in a very long time. So yeah, that's just an example. That's just a story of what I mean by it comes at you real quick. So yes, you forget, but then you also remember when you get to the reality of it, because we knew that we're getting home to um disrupted sleep for and it's not, the end was not in sight. So that would definitely make you remember.
Yeah, so it sounds like you definitely, took advantage of the help where it was available, which I think is very smart. So
Absolutely.
yeah, thank you for sharing that story with us. And I hope that this encourages a new mom out there to take advantage of all the resources that are available to you. If the nurses are willing to watch the baby for the first night or the second night, use it, take it up, and enjoy your sleep. I know it's hard sometimes and it's easy to say, but hey, this is coming from a mom just like you, so trust other moms. This episode of Birthing Beyond Borders is funded by the 4W Initiative and supported by the African Center for Community Development. Please check out these two wonderful organizations. Details can be found in the description below. So I want us to talk a little bit about, the recovery process after childbirth. Um, did you have support from like family and friends during postpartum? Did they come stay with you? What kind of support was available to you and your husband when you had the baby or when you went home with the baby?
I would say, frankly speaking, we did have some help, or I did have some help. I mean, um, and I'm saying I because I consider my husband a very phenomenal help. Um, he had to take paternity leave off for a while, and that was extremely needed. It helped us as a couple. It helped us as a family. Um, but it especially helped us as a couple. It was just a private time I think we just needed. Um, it might work differently for people, but I definitely needed the help. So yes, that's the reason for saying I had some help. And it's just because us now we let's say help outside of both of ourselves. I would say we had help. I can't mention all the help that we had just to kind of I don't know if they would like
Mm-hmm.
the
Yeah,
people
I.
in question would like me to talk about the help, but we did have some help. And again, my faith is very important, and it's the lens at which a lot of everything that I do um is comes from. I think God just sent those help at the right time. Because in hindsight, now I look at it and it was exactly when we needed the help the most that the help came about. So I would say yes, community did help, but did contribute to helping us. For, at least I'd say for the first 6 months, it wasn't consistent. Like maybe we had someone live through with us
Mm-hmm.
back to back, but we definitely had help with childcare that in a way that it helped to lift up the burden. It wasn't something that ever made it seem like, what have I done? So there was never the question of what have I done? Oh my God, it was just no, there was never all of that. It was community was good, and the entire experience was also good.
Okay.
Recovery. I think you mentioned
Yeah.
recovery. Recovery was good as well because of just how happy, joyful that I felt after being discharged from the hospital. I didn't realize how much. And we had help. We had a family member with us for a little while after my son was born. But I just still felt like, oh, I can't believe my body looks, so good. It felt like I just snapped back like within 24 hours. And I was so happy about that. I was so happy about that. I felt like my body could do anything. And I was very athletic too. That was not good enough for epidural. I don't know. I never knew that. So I'll just put it out there. Anybody could do the research about that. And it's not to say I don't encourage athleticism being athletic, but it wasn't um yeah, wasn't good for epidural.
Mm.
But so I felt like my body could just do anything until my body broke down. And I think that affected me for a little while afterwards because I realized that, oh my God, my body really cannot do what I thought it could do. What happened? And then I realized, no, you shouldn't be thinking you can pull on the wall right after childbirth. You should really just, calm down. I didn't know that. So that was definitely something that I would say to any new mom is to really take care of your body. Even if you feel like your body can't do anything in the world right up to childbirth, you should not push your body beyond the trauma you just went through. Just take your time to just give your body the healing time that it needs. It helps a lot. You might not notice, you might not realize it, but down the line, it really pays off to you. The the healing time right after childbirth that you're able to get really pays off down the line compared to when you might just jump right out to it because it feels like your body can do it. But then you realize down the line that, oh, it's um the side effect of that is realized down the line compared to when you really let your body take the healing time that it needs, at least for a couple of weeks right after childbirth. And then you also realize down the line that the side effect of paying attention to that healing your body really needed. Even if you don't feel like your body needs healing, your body really does need healing. You shouldn't be doing a lot of things
Mhm.
that you're not. You should treat your body like your body just came back from um a very major accident.
Mm. That's really profound. And if I can follow up on that, I heard you say that you snapped back pretty quickly, and so you kind of felt like, well, everything is good, I can go about my life, until you broke down. But what are the things that looking back, what are the things that you think you could have done to take care of your body? If you could do this over again, what are some things that you do instead of just like diving right back into like everyday life after having a baby?
I would have used the help that I had more.
Mm.
Yes, I did not maximize. I optimized it, but I didn't maximize it. I did not maximize the help that I had because I did have help, and I must admit that I did have help at least for the first few weeks. But I did not maximize it, and that was because I felt so good,
Mm. And
and I was so proud of my body. So yeah,
Can you say a little bit more about that? Like, what are like examples of things that could have helped you maximize the help more?
I would say cooking.
You said.
I was very Yeah, cooking. I was very particular about my food. I had food aversion when I was pregnant.
Mhm.
And um, after postpartum, I just felt like, okay, I think I should be able to eat anything I want. It didn't come back immediately, but I just felt like, oh, now I can um, get back in the kitchen and do what I need to do. And my husband would be like, oh, it's okay. You don't have to do this. And I'll be like, I need to cook. I need to do this the way I want it to be done. But I shouldn't have done that, just in hindsight. I should have just really been a couch potato and just take care of my baby. So yes,
Yeah.
it's also a part of me that I guess, and I maybe it's also the mom part, I don't know, but it's also a part of me that I guess that is sometimes is has an automatic response, rejection to help.
Mm, mm. That's really deep, Elizabeth. And I think something that just like came to me as you were talking is women giving themselves permission to just rest, and accept help, when it's offered. And I think that that's something a lot of immigrants maybe struggle with. You're just so used to like the hustle. You have to find your way. You have to navigate all of these challenging things, and like that, just you just keep going. And then sometimes when we are offered help, for us it's like, I'm good, thanks. I can figure this out on my own. And so just like little things like just accepting somebody making you a meal and not choosing to cook for yourself, it could definitely go a long way, especially during the recovery period. So thank you so much for calling that out, Elizabeth. Um, I want to talk a little bit more about, emotional support, specifically mental health. Like you said, having a baby is a medical trauma, and sometimes people with help cope a little bit better than those that don't have help. And even sometimes when people have help, it's always sometimes challenging to accept that help. Um, and I just wanted to chat a little bit about, how you felt emotionally and mentally after having the baby. What was the first 6 months, 3 months? What was that period like mentally and emotionally for you as a new mom and a first time mom at that?
That's a very thorough question. It was I had for me, I would say, um let me try to frame it from the perspective, or what part of the recovery surprised me the most. We've talked about the physical part, which was that it felt instant, but it really, down the line, I got to realize that um the papers are right. Whatever you read online that you need to take time to recover is right. You need to take time to recover. Your recovery is might feel, no matter how much it feels instant, it really is not instant. So yeah, we've talked about the physical part and the emotional part as well. I'll say what surprised me the most, and I know this varies significantly from women to women, but for me, I'd say what surprised me the most, um, what part of recovery surprised me the most emotionally, mentally, was the let me think about that a little bit more.
That's fine.
Mm, okay, I'd say it's the most surprising part for me the most was, it takes, for me at least, it took me a while to realize I was a mom.
Hmm. Can you say
And yes, I can. Um, it just didn't sink in immediately. I'd say it sank in a couple months later to realize, oh, I'm actually a mom. Of course, there was the baby I was with almost every day. Um, but still, it and it's because this is not a part where we can easily see. It's not physical.
Yeah.
The emotional, mental, the clock, it did not click. The the full realization of it, that, where you I feel like where you just enter into that um motherhood um cap or outfit. Let me say outfit. Let me say, not say cap, because you can still wear a motherhood cap even if you're not a mom yet, and I mean, like, biologically. um I would say just that, it's the person A. Oh, this is my child. I'd say it didn't kick in immediately.
Mhm.
It's now I can be like, oh yeah, that's my son. But initially it just did not kick in. I'm trying to find the best word, or the right words to describe what that really means. But it just didn't kick in. I just didn't kick in, because it's more like you've seen yourself as, for lack of a better word, a baby girl for so long, and then now it's like, oh, a baby girl has a baby boy.
Mhm.
And you're trying to know how to, make one lesser and make one more, because I mean, you're a baby girl, but you're also not a baby girl. You're a full-blown adult, and then you have a baby boy to take care of, and you're not also a you're a mom. It's like, think about it from the perspective of your mom. Your mom it's like knows that she has a daughter that's you somewhere, and she's been a mom for as long as she could remember at the moment. And so there's no question about, oh, that's my mom. Oh, I need to call my mom. Or your mom being like, oh, I need to check on my daughter. But when you've been someone's daughter for so long, and you've seen yourself as the daughter that needs to refer to the mom, the parent, and now you're now that parent. It took a while to sink in. Not a while, I would say a couple of months, but it did take a bit to sink in. And it wasn't like it was a big deal. It wasn't anything about being emotionally traumatized or anything like that. It was just, oh, really? I'm a mom? It was just like that.
Mm-hmm. And
And go ahead,
oh, I was
please.
just gonna say, do you know why it took a couple months for that to sink in?
I would say, I guess the most important thing that motherhood has taught me is just to be present, to smell the roses. Go out there and smell the roses. Go out there and, be present. Um, Attention, I like to say, consumes presence. To be able to pay rapt attention to something, you gotta be present. And I'm always someone that experiences. I live an experience before it happens. So when it happens, I don't, and I'd say it comes from a core value of not um of holding success lightly. So to kind of put perspective to that, I would say this uncertainty of life has humbled me as a person. I'm taking this back to my value systems. The uncertainty of life has humbled me um personally, and just a moment, I don't want to forget my thought. The uncertainty of life has humbled me personally, and what I mean by that is the fact that you can have one day to be full and the next day can just be empty. But to take it back to the analogy of, there's in the Bible, there's the analogy of seven thin cows in the Bible and devouring seven fat cows. That was the interpretation of Joseph's dream to Pharaoh. And so it's like there could be 7 fat years, very beautiful, abundant years. Life is beautiful, life is lovely and perfect. And then there are years after that that subliminally just, eat up those very beautiful years. And it looks like, wow, your life doesn't even look anything like it once had this level of privilege or beauty or perfection. So, that reality sort of has, it sharpens you, but most importantly, it has taught me to hold on to success lightly and hold on to people tightly. So, and that helps you to become more intentional about what really matters. Which again is tied to what we've talked about earlier on core values, the things that matter to you. So basically, to define the things that matter to you, decide how much you want to show up for those things, and to to define the level of priority you want to give to them. How much, if every day, every time, every 2 days, every other day, that you want to show up for those things. So um I I measure my days more by, let me say, my alignment than more than by achievement, because I'm trying to better explain what I mean by holding success lightly. So it doesn't mean like some like I'm mediocre. I don't know. That's not what I mean. What I mean is I measure my days more by alignment. How much more I'm aligned to the things that matter to me most and how much more I'm working. So it's more like it's like an pursuit to becoming.
Mm.
And it's like an asymptote of perfection that you're constantly, going after. So I don't so measure my days by alignment, not by achievement, and keeping the things that matter to me at the top of that list. So that sort of is what underbellies what I mean by, you know, I mostly leave, prior or before out literally have experienced a thing before it happened. That's because there's so much thought, there's so much time and energy, and there's just so much of thought process and a lot more in between that has gone into whatever phase that I am before I get into it.
Mhm.
So when I get into it, it's like, oh, it's a success, but I don't spend a lot of time. Try to give myself 24 to 48 hours to celebrate, a big win or success, and then I just move on to the next thing.
Mm.
But motherhood, the birth of a child, is a very big one, and you can't do that. No matter how much I try to be like, oh, what next? It's like a battle of the mind to try to be like, no, there's nothing next. At least that's what you're gonna choose to tell yourself. There's nothing next. You gotta be present, and you have to see this. So I think I would say that was and there could be more that I'm not remembering at the moment, or I can, but to the best that I can try to connect the dots, I'd say that played a major role in that brief gap of seeing myself as my son's mom, not maybe not as a mom, but as my son's mom.
Mhm.
It's like, oh, it's just learning to live in the present. Like, oh, this is it. At least for that very sensitive period.
Mm.
Yeah. So yes, that's it.
Yeah. Thank you for first admitting that, and just like talking about like your thought process around it, and um and I think it comes back to, as immigrants, there's always like that, like we have this hustle culture. We're always chasing the next thing. You get a master's degree. Okay, let's get a PhD. Now you have a PhD. Let's get that dream job. Let's buy that house. Like, there's always one thing. And then when you have a kid, you kind of slow down a little bit. And it's like you can't do all these next thing, next thing, next thing. You have to, like you said, take it in and smell the roses and be present for that moment. And sometimes, that can be like a really hard realization for people that are very much used to like being super ambitious and just like chasing one thing after the other, and then just that realization of, whoa, I have to slow down now, I have to be present for this kid, can be very can be such a huge change. So thank you for admitting that and talking a little bit about it as well. Over the past of over our conversation, I've heard you talk about like religion and your faith, and I'm curious to know what role has religion played in your mental well-being during the recovery process since being a mom.
That's a very important question. I'd say faith. I'll call it more faith than religion because I see faith more as an interpersonal relationship. It's like I see it more as an intimacy walk, more than a structural um routine on things of list of things to do. Of course, the intimacy walk produces um routines and things that you need to do. Go to church, maybe for example, but that is an offset of the intimacy walk. It's not all by itself. So that's why I just want to make that subtle distinction. Um, what role did faith play um in all of this in my recovery? It played a, a significant role in and of itself. Um, recovery was just recovery. Recovery was just recovery. It you it's there at the I saw it more as a continuation of just the day-to-day things that you do. Of course, you're busier. You have more things to do than you would in your ordinary days. More you have less sleep as well to reboot and recharge than you would. in your ordinary day, and you probably don't have the time to do the things that you probably would have been able to fit into your day as you would, especially when the baby's very young. I mean, less than 6 months, when they're still adjusting to a routine, they're still adjusting to a full night's sleep, for example. So, um, the aspect of faith coming in is just sometimes finding peace in the midst of all of that. So, in the midst of the storm that comes with the season, the busyness, just still staying anchored. Otherwise, you might be prone to anxiety.
Mm.
So just staying anchored in that, it's making sure even if the house is clean and quiet inside of you, inside of your temple, inside of your own house, it's just as clean and quiet as it is on the outside. And it is in that way that when your cup is full, you can be able to pour. And sometimes it's okay to acknowledge as well. I'm going to say this more as a forward facing counsel word for new moms. It's okay to give so much to your baby just because of how very delicate the season is. It's okay to give so much more to your baby that you don't have, that your cup just gets empty because you're just giving so much. The baby needs you more. The baby cannot do it. It's very dependent on you, at least for the first year or two of their lives. But and it's okay to feel like, oh, I'm just pouring into this, new human, and it's nothing filling up my cup. That's why you have, if that is the case, a partner, a husband, it's okay to have a way to refill your cup because the saying that goes, you can't pour from an empty cup is really true. And moms sometimes are prone to having an empty cup.
Mm.
So there has to be that regulation on the inside to always make sure that your child gets the best of you. It's really the best of you that they want. And sometimes there might be compromise. A lot life is a race of constantly making trade-offs anyway. Sometimes there might be trade-offs. The trade-offs might be something about your schedule. The trade-off might be having the perfectly clean house that you want. The trade-off can be getting your nails groomed, just your grooming, you're getting your nails done, your hair, just the things you would do for yourself. There has to be that trade-off sometimes, and learning to manage that new schedule of life, adjust well into motherhood and how you define your motherhood to be for yourself, and but most importantly, making sure that it is the best of you that your child is always getting, and that means finding that regulation, finding that way to keep pouring into yourself, having that couples time as well, to take time out of just parenting and reconnecting, because I think that's also very important. And just however way your community, your faith-based community, if that is what you have, can give to you, just finding that, way. So I'd say that answer that has been very pertinent with respect to the role that I think faith plays. Um, the peace, refilling the cup in order to give out appropriately again and again and again
Right.
is very important.
Yeah. So it sounds like for you, it's, as a mom, you're pouring out a lot to your child, to your husband, but
That's right.
your faith helps you to refill that cup that you're pouring from. Mm.
A major role, yes.
Okay. Okay. Um, so very quickly, I want to go to my last section because you kind of answered some of the other questions that I had regarding, advice for like new moms and like, a bit of a reflection on like things that you would think that new moms should do. So I want to talk a bit about the resources that you found to be helpful during this pregnancy and postpartum journey. Um, I guess in terms of like, community organization or like you said faith spaces or just like birthing classes, what kind of resources were helpful for you and how did you find out about these resources?
Honestly speaking, I would say again, it was my community.
Mm,
And this kind of ties back to the start of this podcast where I mentioned why this was extremely important and how it, I mentioned that it actually ties down to almost everything you're going to talk about. And books. I have struggled with, I love to read. I read almost 30, 40 more books every year, but I've struggled to read it to keep up to that pace in a couple of years just because of PhD is so much going on. I'm very surprised that it is when I happen to be the most busiest ever in my life that I've read the most books. And the year is not even over.
mm,
So it is books. I fell in love with reading books again. I've always loved reading books, but just PhD makes you read so much book. You don't have time to read the other books you like to read.
mm,
So I have happened to go back to reading again, and it's made me. Sometimes I just get so overwhelmed. I just pick up a book and just read. I just finished reading this newly released book by Femi Tadala, Making It Big,
mhm,
and it's quite a big book. And you wonder why where I have the time to finish that book.
mhm. So it sounds
But
like
the time
doing the
just,
things that you find like doing the things that you enjoy. Because at first when I heard you say reading books, I thought
yeah.
you were referring to like reading books about motherhood and things like that. But
Oh
I'm getting this
no.
right. So it's actually like doing your hobby, like finding time to actually read books that that you find inspiring or things that you enjoy reading about. Right.
Absolutely. It's just, yes, that is exactly what I mean. Yes. Okay. It's good you made that distinction
Okay.
because that was very good catch. Yeah. So I enjoy reading books. So yes, I enjoy reading a whole lot. So yes, when I'm overwhelmed, I pick up the book. When I feel like my son is wants me and he doesn't want me to do anything else, I pick up the book. When I just feel like, okay, I'm blank, I've just been studying long, I've been on this paper, I've been on my research, I pick up the book. And I need a break, I pick up the book. So
Mm.
yes, that's what I mean by that. And if I'm not doing that, I am sleeping because sleep is quite a scarce commodity right now in my life. So sleeping, that's very, very important to me. That's not really community focused. So I can say, oh, go and get sleep. You can order it somewhere. No, it's just something that's
Right.
so that's not necessarily yeah, something I can say go and get. And community again. So having the right people have that you can just, sometimes call and just check up on them and then just have belly laughs about anything and everything and just leave the call better than the way you started before the call. So it's just an everyday moment and seizing the time that makes you realize just that the moments that matter the most sometimes are in the simple moments. So yes, I would say it's nothing spectacular. It's all just tied to the simple moments.
Okay. In terms of like resources and support from the healthcare centers, for some people they have doulas, for some people they have birthing classes, some people have like resources at the hospital where they talk about like lactation consultants and things like that. Did you use any of these resources during your pregnancy or perinatal journey?
Uh, Let me think. Let me think. I don't think I did.
Okay. And that's, that's absolutely okay. For some people tend to use the more formal resources. Some people use the informal ones, like you said, like your community, focusing on a hobby, sleeping. So those are like, other things that, some moms find to be most helpful. And that takes me to my next question. In terms of, just looking back, are there resources that you think could have been helpful for you that you probably didn't have access to or that you didn't know about?
It was certainly. Let me piggyback because I just remember the resource that I took advantage
Okay.
of for the good. It was so my insurance offers this free perinatal classes where they just teach you. They have the Zoom classes about different subjects. Now I can't remember, Mr. Reed, but just different subjects about childbirth. I was more interested in the classes of courses about childbirth, lactation, etc., and everything that surrounds the third trimester and everything and all of that. So I did attend all of those classes. It was all online. So yes, I just remember that I did attend those classes. It wasn't through the hospital. I guess that's because I that's why I didn't really think about that outrightly. There was a resource I probably could have utilized, and that was the lactation resource. But I found out about it late, and I was still within the window at which I could qualify for it. But then I just didn't have the time. I just didn't have the time, and it all worked out well anyway. But it was definitely a resource that if I had the time and probably the um if I had researched a little more about it prior, if I've had prior to when I needed it, I would have definitely utilized it. So that is definitely one that I felt like yes, I could have utilized. But the classes online, check with your insurance. This is something I would give to new moms as well, expecting moms. Check with insurance while you're pregnant or before you're pregnant to explore those classes. They were invaluable. I really appreciated because I learned a couple of things that were very instrumental down the line for those classes when I had my baby too as well. There were some play dates. It was online.
Oh, really?
And yes, and it was fun. It was cool. I did it for a few times. You just find other kids that are there. You can turn on a video if you want. And if you don't want, you might not, you can choose not to. And there's a teacher that is leading the date, and then there are other kids that are doing the same thing that you're doing, that the teacher is doing with the dummy baby. And it's just fun. And then you can get into breakout rooms where you like have the other kids play if you want.
Mm-hmm.
So there was that, and it was good for a while. And your library might also be offering free resources for babies, infants, and toddlers, so for different age groups. You can check with that as well, and see if it's something that you want to just introduce your baby to. Sometimes it could even be the water park. Your local civic center might be having just a fun activity at the water park. You can take your kids to, I mean, of course, an infant, maybe not, a toddler, maybe.
Absolutely.
So these were just resources that I had explored. I didn't use all of it, but they were the ones that I used. I found it very invaluable.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
I think that's all I can think of.
Okay. As you were talking, I also just remembered that I've spoken to some moms who said that they got free breast pump from through their insurance, and I think
Mhm.
sometimes a lot of new moms, especially immigrant moms, don't know about these resources. So I think it's like you said, just reach out to your insurance company and ask them, for the resources or options that are available. I didn't know that they were online mommy and baby classes. So, I'm glad that you mentioned that, and hopefully somebody listening to this can utilize that as well. Um so we're moving towards the end of this episode, and I want to touch a little bit on just the overall perinatal journey, from getting pregnant to having the baby, and then after you had the baby and all of these things. Is there anything you would have done differently, and differently in terms of like we've talked about some of the resources that you use that you probably would have used if you had known about them a little bit earlier, but just generally, are there anything you would have done differently?
In terms of resources, I would say no. I'd say no. I Because again, like I said, I came in through this season or this space very armed with knowledge. So I might not have really known when the knowledge was going to come into me, and that kind of would lead to the second thing I'm gonna talk about. But I came into this season, this phase, this motherhood, pregnancy, very, very prepared, very armed with knowledge um about what's about everything that it takes. I'd also had the privilege, I'd consider it a great privilege to be able to work with kids and of all ages. I'd say I've worked with kids from 0 to 8. Very instrumental because it definitely comes in handy, and it came in handy as well. So I would say there was nothing that I think I'd do differently because the there were just some things that I just find myself just doing. That you wouldn't really think that you would probably have anticipated or known to do, but you just find yourself doing it or just knowing what to do.
Mm-hmm.
And that leads to the second thing that I want to say, which is all tied um my which is all tied to where I am because I consider this an entirely different season um of life, and which is the thread. If I were to run a thread through my life story, I would say um there were things from my background. There were themes from my background, of course. I'm a deeply reflective person that I have sat down to think about. I'm like, okay, this is, what were the things that I've been privileged to have, to learn, to be exposed to, family, and all of that that I can say is a very useful tool for where I am now, where I'm going to, where I'm preparing to get to in life. So all of that is actually all connected. And my value systems I grew up with, loved. I always There's love at home, thankfully. Um, Faith, character, being an immigrant, living in the United States, did not change those values. It instead revealed them. And even the perception of uncertainty that I talked about earlier on, uh, the uncertainty of life, I see it as an opportunity instead of more as um a weakness. It's a weakness of life, or just a sad thing about life. It's actually an opportunity because uncertainty actually helped me clarify my priorities, and all of that joined together has made as sort of slid into my motherhood experience, because motherhood is actually where I practice all of those daily. So no regrets. It's nothing I think I could have done better. I think everything altogether that I've learned, that I'm still learning, that I've been through, my entire process of being in the US, like I said, my living in the United States didn't change my values. It instead revealed them, and it made me realize how very grounded, the level of grounding that I'm thankful that I grew up with, um, and how each and every one of those things are being practiced in motherhood daily.
Hmm. Yeah, thank you for talking about you know your experience, one with the resources, and also just like how your upbringing and your background kind of like showed up, in this motherhood journey. Um, my last question is, for healthcare workers and maternal and child health organizations that are providing services to African immigrant mothers specifically, what message would you like to give to them in terms of like providing care to mothers like yourself?
Are you talking about
Yeah,
hospitals or
yeah.
just birth centers?
Hospitals, birth centers, NGOs, CBOs, just organizations that provide care or services to
Hmm,
African immigrant mothers or pregnant women.
that's really hard because I'm not, to be very honest, as much as I read a lot about what is out there, I only read about the experiences of what actually happens. I don't know the individual. I don't think I am well I am learned in with respect to the individual. or the aggregate individual experiences of um, women prior to motherhood. Yes, so and I'm sure that might also tremendously vary. So it's hard for me to say, oh, this is what you should do. This is what I think should be done better. This is what I think could not be done better. Um, if you know what I mean.
Mhm.
Um, but I know I can't use my own personal life experience as a one size fit all, because again, value systems vary. Um, my interest, I can't also mistake interest for values. We might all be mothers, we might have similar interests, but our value systems are not, do not have the same grounding or similarity. So I also cannot use myself as a one size fits all. I can't use my experience to give a recommendation. But one thing I would say that I think would apply to anyone and everyone, regardless, would be just the availability of community, and the because I think that is something that we all, most immigrant, I would say, grew up with. Then you come to the United States, you start your own family, and it feels like you don't have that anymore.
Mhm.
And when I mean community, community probably not necessarily in the way that I have defined mine. You know what I mean by community, my which is respect to having a neighbor that you can rely on, having a neighbor you can keep your kids with and go to work, having other kids that you can play with. You would have to live in a very you would have to live in a community most likely with similar tribe, similar background, similar kinds of people to have that. And even at that, you would still have to be very proactive and very careful, very mommy bear, mother hen over your kids with respect to that community. And that's just where we are today. So and people, and I mean, I've read about that, I've thought about that, I've done my own research about that, and I've seen that there's also the other side of that. So it's really hard to say that this is what should be done, or this is how community should be, because there have been arguments about all of that, being just people taking advantage of, of other people, because I mean, let's not get into all that philosophy, but however way people want to define the presence or absence of community, I've read arguments about that, and that's why I am at a point where I do not have, I'll be honest to say, I do not have enough knowledge to say that I can make a recommendation about it yet. It's still very, it to me, I still see it from a very, just from my own lens. It's a very individually tailored lens at the moment. So community is important. I'd say organizations should try as much as possible to provide it for those that probably are less privileged than, because we are all privileged. We just, it's varied. That are less privileged than others with respect to probably care and means. Maybe care might be a priority, but for those that probably have that and are less privileged in terms of community. So it also depends on the goal and focus of the hospital, of the organization, with respect to postpartum care. So community is just still the biggest part of what I'm talking
Right.
about. Community, and based on the environment, based on the community, based on the aggregate of um the aggregate needs of women in that environment, a particular environment that the organization, birth center, hospital services are in. I'd say to take on all of what is the aggregate most important needs of mothers, new moms, or mothers generally, new moms, especially in that environment, and see how to um, um, build or create resources that are tailor made for that can best serve the women in that environment. So again, for me, I would say there would be community. There's this app Peanuts, um, where you can find mothers, and then you can also organize physical in-person play dates, or just get to know, meet other mothers in the community. That might be something that the hospital does. Like I said, the local library does something like that as well. That can be something that a local NGO does. I'd say it depends on, the community, the environment rather, and what is most important to most women, the average women,
Mhm.
or mom in that environment. That was a long
No, that makes
rambling answer.
no, that does make sense.
Yeah.
Like you said, it depends on the need of the women in the community. I think and again, it depends on, where these women are from. Um, i- we talk quite a lot about like community and like apps like Peanut where you can meet other moms and network and just build your communities like that. I think for some women that's absolutely what they need. For some other people, what they need is information about things like get where can I get a baby car seat? Where can I get a breast pump? Where can I get um food, to how do I know what kind of food to give my baby at 6 months? So I think, like you said, it depends on, the need of the community. So thank you for pointing that out. That's my last question. I just want to say thank you so much, Elizabeth, for taking the time to chat with me today and for sharing your experience and your journey with us on the podcast. So thank you so much once again. And I really look forward to, continuing to follow up on your journey and yeah, just sharing with our brother community. Thank you once again.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure to unwrap this conversation. I'm glad that you're doing this. I'm glad that there's these resources that has been made available for maternal health. So thank you too, and thank you for having me once again.
You're very welcome. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Birthing Beyond Borders. I hope you've learned something new or felt seen in today's conversation. If you're a mom listening today, know that you're doing an incredible job, and as a community, we are so proud of you. Please share this episode with another mom or with a friend who might find it helpful. Remember, you are not alone and you don't need permission to do the things that bring you joy. I'm rooting for you. Goodbye.